Mem Zayin, Amud Beis, sorry, Mem Ches, we are Mem Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara, in last week's Gemara, we saw the achrayas, the obligations of a ger to be a mekabel gerus, to do mila, tevila, and kabbalas mitzvahs, or kabbalas mitzvahs tevila. And the Gemara had said, are we eating during the year?
Isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're everyone's like, I don't know the rules.
Yeah, I think we are, as long as we're apart.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, I had some horse.
Spoons.
I don't know. I just think.
Thank you. Yeah.
Interesting.
No spoons? So we'll get. Oh, wait. Take a breather for a minute.
Sorry?
I'm going to take a breather for a minute. I've been running from one meeting to the next.
Busy?
One meeting was about how to play Tetris, and the other how to play Donkey Kong.
That's busy.
I'm stuck in 81. Huh?
Oh, you like 1981? I go a lot of meetings, but I do too much running. It's so strange. I jump from person to person, like all the rules. People can jump all the time. No. Roll over the window.
When I got off my last meeting, I said, thank you. I got off my last meeting, I said, I'm not going to eat well.
I found this.
Shkech.
You want those?
No, I'm going to focus on this. I'll eat later. Shkech. I said I had to get off of davening on my last meeting. So I said, I'm going to jump. I need to go. I need to jump. And I realized, that's exactly over. I need to jump. Anyhow, okay. Back to...
Jumping rabbi.
Okay, so the Bryce had said, Echad ger v'echad eved meshuchrar, also a emancipated eved is also going to require being kabbalas mitzvahs. Kasal kedaitach lekabel olavel mitzvahs. So the Gemara thinks that what does it mean that a ger and then eved that is being emancipated needs to be, and this is a 47b, Mem Zayin Amud Beis, that it needs to have they're the same halacha. They both need kabbalas mitzvahs. Or mini. So we ask a contradiction. Unable to join using link. Let's help him join. So the Brisa says that a ger and an eved meshuchar both need this same halacha. So the Gemara thinks that the requirement is to do mekabel mitzvahs. So we ask a contradiction. For a minute, so we have a contradiction because it says that an eved does not need kabbalas mitzvahs. Whether an eved also needs kabbalas mitzvahs. And the idea is that we know, as we see in this Gemara, but we've talked about this before, that an eved is not only, an eved really is mechuyev mitzvahs, is bal lechlal Yisrael to some degree. So he's a yid, mechuyev mitzvahs, but not a full yid. Lashon Rambam is, that he left, umas ha'olam, but he's L'chlal Yisrael, he didn't come to a complete klal Yisrael. Okay, whatever this in-between stage is, but he needs Kabbalah's mitzvahs because he's mechuyev mitzvahs. He's going to need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. And on that, there's a machlekes of Shimon Elazar says, no, he doesn't need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. It's automatic. As much as he becomes an Eved, he also is mechuyev in mitzvahs. And the Chachamim say no, that he's going to need a Kabbalah's mitzvahs. The Tanya we learned. That the captive from war is going to be a Yefastar. The Torah connected Dibra Torah connected Yitzhahara, a person out, a soldier is out in the field. They're under stress. The Torah is afraid that he would lose his own morals, and so the Torah says, you know what? Bring her home, take the captive home, and this way you slow it down, and hopefully that avoid that contain the Yitzhahara. But the idea is that she needs to we're going to see the Gemara 30 days, 90 days, but from a Yerach Yamim, she has to cry for her family. This that she needs to wait all this time is Shaloi Kibla Aleh. She was not Makabel mitzvahs. Aval Kibla Aleh mitvila matbila umutaba miyad. But if she's Makabel mitzvahs, so then she's a regular yid. So matbila, you take it in the mikvah, and she's in this guy or miyad mutaba miyad, and in mutter right away.
What happens if she's not Makabel mitzvahs? What happens at 30 days?
At 30 days, 90 days, right? So we'll get to that in a moment.
What the hell if she's not Makabel mitzvahs?
So we'll get to that in a moment. What happens in the end? But the idea is that if she's Makabel mitzvahs, then he's mutter with her right away, and if not, then it happens later. Right? So Rabbi Shimon Elazar says no. Well, even if she doesn't want to be Kabbalah mitzvahs, he can force her to go to the mikveh, and then for the sake of avdus, slavery, and then he emancipates her and sends her back to the mikveh for emancipation. And this is all Kabbalah's mitzvahs against her will. So according to Shimon Elazar, there is no need to be for her to have or him any eved to have a Kabbalah's mitzvahs, not at the beginning, not at the end, at the emancipation, at the shichrur. Either way, just the act of servitude of going to the mikveh l'shem avdus is sufficient to make them obligated in mitzvahs. That's what Shimon Elazar. And the Chachamim disagree. They say no, that there's a need for Kabbalah's mitzvahs.
She was included in mitzvah when she went to the mitzvah. That's when she went to the mitzvah.
Correct. And Evan and Shivcha is mechuyev mitzvahs.
So you got that from the fact that you visited her after you entered the mitzvah a second time, that she must have been included in mitzvah.
No, because I got that from the fact that the halacha is that a shivcha is mechuyev mitzvahs. Eved and shivcha are mechuyev in mitzvahs. That's just the halacha. Correct. And it's talking about Kabbalah's mitzvahs, and it says that it's done ba'al korcha.
What does Rashi mean? The chol tfilas amadim al korcha.
That's the nature of, if somebody goes to the mikvah, right, with their own on their own volition, that's conversion, that's gerus.
Right.
So the manner within which mikvah for avdus works is that there has to be a form of servitude at that moment of going to the mikvah. I didn't learn Rashi to mean against their will specifically, but that it means that there's an aspect of Baal Karcha in there, because it's not Baal Karcha at all. A person can sell themselves into slavery, and it's not Baal Karcha.
Certainly, there are some that are not Baal Karcha.
Right, and Rashi says the Chol Tvilas Avodah Baal Karcha. So it doesn't. I don't think it means that it is by force,
I've never seen the phrase al karchan used not in that way.
It can't be by force, as we see the Gemara over here. Yud Beis Chodesh, right? And if he doesn't want to go, then you have to free him, right? The Gemara on Amud Beis, right? The Gemara on Amud Beis says that you acquire this Eved, and you tell the Eved, look, you have to go to the mikveh and be mekabel mitzvahs and do a bris within in the opposite order within the next 12 months. 12 months, you're gonna delay, and if you don't, I have to let you go, right? So clearly, if going to the mikveh is bal karcha, just do it.
The bris is not karchan. The Gemara they're talking about where he doesn't want to have mila. He can do mila bal karchan.
But Rashi says tvila there.
Even the tefillah, like there, the Gemara is talking about it's low rats of lamel, right? Like they don't want to mila, right? Maybe I'm not saying like.
No, Rashi clearly says to go to the mikveh.
Here, Rashi is saying that. Also,
no, there also.
There is also to go to the mikveh.
Mm-hmm. Is it Rashi? Where? Where? Yeah. Yemol v'kacham me'alma the lav eved ba'al karchay. Oh yeah, ever shall lekachta me'alim v'kacham me'atamol ba'al karchay. No, that's on the ben of a guy. That's the son. You can't
because they're saying as opposed to someone who sold me, as opposed to someone who's already an who sold to you, like Stam, to go to a random guy and make him a right that.
Right. That we'll get to the Gemara in a minute. But the idea is that you don't. There are definitely cases of non Baal Karchay and Evet. It's not. You can't read this Rashi Kol Tvilos Avodah Baal Karchay. It doesn't really work because it doesn't work. So it doesn't mean that you always force them into the mikveh. That's not the case. But rather, what it means is that all the mikveh is going in order for it to be avdus, it has to be in a certain way in the name of servitude, which is a form of avdus, of Baal Karchay. Okay, so we have a machlokes over here between Rav Shimon Elazar and the Chachamim, whether or not the end, the emancipation, the shichrur happens with Kabbalas mitzvahs or not. Well, what's not clear is what about the first step? Is there a need for Kabbalas mitzvahs at the first step or not? Okay, so the Gemara says, Amar Rava, my time in Rav Shimon Elazar. What's the basis for Rav Shimon Elazar? The basis for Rav Shimon Elazar that an Eved does not need to accept the mitzvahs upon themselves. The Sefer says, "Kol Eved ish miknas kesef." Now the Gemara asks, "Eved ish v'le Eved isha?" Only the Eved of a man and not an Eved of a woman. That can't be the meaning. Now, what's that scenario? The Torah is talking about that the halacha is that you're not allowed to eat the carbon pesach if someone in your household doesn't have a bris. Now, what's define someone in your household? A child in the family, or a servant, an eved that doesn't have a bris, is also going to not allow you to to partake in the Korban Pesach. And to this it says, Kol Eved Ish, the Eved of a man. So he says, wait, Eved of a man and not the Eved of a woman? Therefore, that can't be the meaning. Rather, Eved Ish, Atamal Bal Karchai, if the servant, your servant, you can force into the bris, meaning you can force them into gerus. V'atamo ben ish bal karcha, but you can't have a convert who has a son who did not convert with him. He can't force him into gerus, into a bris. Now, Rashi says that this is a bitmiyah. It's a wonder. Eved Ish and not an Eved Isha? Why not? The truth is, the Panim Yafis asked a question over here. Maybe that's true. Maybe a woman's obligation is not to she doesn't have the obligation to mal her son. That the Gemara in Kedushin says that the mitzvah of bris milah is on the father, not on the son. Because we learn somebody that's obligated in milah is obligated in themselves with milah, is obligated in giving a bris to their son, and somebody that's not obligated in milah themselves, meaning a woman, is not obligated in giving a bris to her son. So if there's a mother, a single mother who has a son, whether her husband's not home or divorced or she's a widow, then she's not. It's unbased. Then it's on the kahila to give the son a bris, not the woman herself. So what would be, so why are we so, the Panim Yafis asked, why are we so sure, with the Gemara is asking, that can't be the meaning. It can't mean the Eved of a man it will invalidate the Korban Pesach, but the Eved of a woman would not. Why not? After all, maybe a woman, just as she's not obligated to give a bris to her son, so too she's not obligated to give a bris to her a servant, and she can eat the Korban Pesach. And so your question was, well, maybe she can't eat the Korban Pesach.
Maybe that's not the criteria. Maybe Taka she can't even with her kids. She's not included in the bris.
Right. So that's the chiddush that we're going to have over here. And Kiva Eiga over here on the side of the Gemara points out that there's a Masha later in Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Beis that deals with this. The Gemara later tries to talk about tries to find a scenario where someone would at the time of the shechita of the Korban Pesach would have been valid for the Korban Pesach, but at the time of the eating of the Korban Pesach would not be allowed to eat the Korban Pesach on account of that they have a male in their family that did not have a bris. Now, normally that wouldn't be the scenario, because if they were mechuyev in a bris already, then they would be mechuyev already on Erev Pesach in the morning, right? And so that even at the shechting, they would not be able to bring the Korban Pesach. And if the 8th day is the first day of Pesach, so then you can eat the Korban Pesach, because the next morning they can give them a bris. They can't yet give them a bris. So in what scenario would at the time of the shechita they would be exempt of giving a bris to their son? And therefore the Torah says don't make a Korban Pesach if there's somebody in your household that doesn't have a bris, and it says don't eat the Korban Pesach. The Gemara says, well, if you already can't make it, you can't eat it. No, maybe you're allowed to make it, but not allowed to eat it. So what's the scenario? So the Gemara has one example I'll give you is that the Gemara says maybe the baby was ill, had an eye infection, and so you couldn't do the bris in the morning, so you brought your Korban Pesach because you were exempt. And in the afternoon, the baby healed. Now you can't eat the Korban Pesach because now the baby's mechuyev in a bris and you didn't do it.
Maybe Erev Pesach is in Shabbos. Maybe the bris not do it for Shabbos because it's a suffix for Shmashos.
So then you're not mechuyev. Well, that means you're not mechuyev. If I can't do the bris, I can't do the bris. It's just like I'm mechuyev also and the baby's ill. I'm mechuyev.
Right, so you're not mechuyev on Shabbos. That's why you can check it. But then by the nighttime, you're mechuyev.
I'm not mechuyev yet, because if I couldn't do it, so then I can't do a bris at night.
So why don't you just say that when the 8th day is on?
Because I could have done it before. I've never been.
What was wrong with when the 8th day is on the first day of Pesach? You couldn't, right?
Then I'm allowed to eat the Korban Pesach because right? I'm allowed to eat the Korban Pesach because I'm not obligated yet. So that's one case. Another case the Gemara gives is where the father and mother were taken captive and they were set free after the Korban Pesach was brought before the Seder. Okay, that's the case of the Gemara. And Rashi says, over there in the final of Amud Beis, they were chavushin. B'shas asiyah, when the Korban Pesach was being shechted, they were locked up. U'mitzvahs mila matelas aleim, and the mitzvah of mila is upon them. V'lei al acher on no one else. Ve'heim einam yicholim lasis hapischan, and they can't make the Korban Pesach. V'shachat shluchan aleim, somebody shechted on their behalf because they were in captivity.
You can do a shliach for bris.
No, it's nobody else's obligation. Meaning nobody else is going to be exempt of Korban Pesach because of that. Nobody else is going to.
For some reason, they didn't appoint someone.
Right.
Yeah.
So somebody brought the Korban Pesach for them. That if they were freed by the time the sun set, so then the bris of their son is going to hold them back. Now, the Marsha says that's great for the father, but the mother is not obligated in the bris milah. How could Rashi say the milah mutelas aleim, the mitzvah of milah is incumbent upon them? It's actually not. The mother doesn't have the mitzvah of milah, so why can't she eat the Korban Pesach? And the Marsha says you're right, but the mother is obligated in the Korban Pesach because men and women are both obligated in Korban Pesach, right? Even though that it's a time-bound mitzvah, but we learn from chametz and matzah, so a woman is also obligated in Korban Pesach. So since a woman is also obligated in Korban Pesach, and the Torah says you can't eat the Korban Pesach if someone in your household is not gemalit, is not have a bris. And so since it's mutelas aleim, doesn't mean it's your obligation to do the bris, but it's your household. It's in this person is in your household. This person is upon you, meaning they're on your table, they're in your household, and that's what you're obligated, and that's why you're withheld from eating Korban Pesach. And similarly, we're going to say over here, the Gemara takes it as a pashut, that it cannot be that you're going to eat the Korban Pesach, that the woman's, an eved of a woman is going to be exempt of bris milah, and therefore she can eat the Korban Pesach. No, there's someone in the household, meaning the eved, that doesn't have a bris, and so she wouldn't be able to eat the Korban Pesach. So which tells us a very interesting thing. It may be that the mitzvah of doing the bris is incumbent upon the father and not the mother. But that's the doing of the bris, but not the having the oral in the household. It's still, you are responsible for the fact that you have an unbrissed child in your house. So you don't have the proactive obligation, but you are held, but it is an unbrissed child in your household, and you can't bring a Korban Pesach. You can't bring Korban Pesach because within your household, a child that's on your under your responsibility is it doesn't have a bris. And it's an interesting thing. What we see that the idea of not eating the Korban Pesach is not because, look, you've been negligent in your obligations of bris milah. That's not the point. Because if it was, she could say, I have not been negligent. In fact, it's not my obligation. That's not the right. So it's not the negligence of you didn't bris someone, you didn't give a bris to a child in your household or to the eved in your household that needs it, because you don't have that obligation at all. Rather, it's that you can't have Korban Pesach when within your household someone is not in the bris. And that's different. It's not because you've been negligent, but because there is a non-bris, an Eino ben bris in your household. And that's enough to preclude you from either bringing or eating the Korban Pesach. And I'll bring you another proof to this, because we know the halacha is if somebody, two siblings died from a bris, meaning they have hemophilia or something, and so they can't. So the third brother not allowed to do a bris, but there's an oral in the household. You can't bring Korban Pesach. Wait, but there is a reason for it. It's not negligence in the obligation, because the mitzvah, the obligation is actually put aside. It's suspended. And nevertheless, you're going to be exempt. Meaning not allowed to bring the Korban Pesach. The exemption is not enough. It's suspended, and nevertheless you can't bring the Korban Pesach because there's an Eino Ben Beris in your household. So same over here. Is the woman obligated to?
You can bring it, but you can't.
Well, no, you're not allowed to bring it either if you if you have an Eino Ben Beris in your household at the time of doing it, right? So the scenarios we were looking for was either the child was ill, meaning it had an eye infection, or they were locked up. So somehow there was this in between time that the obligation set in, or the non-bris ben bris is now a hindrance to you because it's set in between the asiya and the achila. But the idea is that it's not the obligation. So if at first learning this Gemara, I would say, oh, the Gemara clearly is of the opinion that the woman who has an eved is obligated to give a bris to her son, to her eved. To which the Panim Yafas, who learned it this way, said, how can that be? She's not obligated to give a bris to her own son. She's obligated to give a bris to her eved? And the answer is no. You're right. Panim Yafas, you're right. She's not obligated to give a bris to her son or to her eved. So what is going on? She's obligated, even though she's not obligated, but it does count as within her household, and therefore she can't eat the Korban Pesach. And that's what the Gemara is saying. Can it be that only a man can't eat a Korban Pesach if there's a eved that doesn't have a bris, and a woman can eat the Korban Pesach if there's a eved that doesn't have a bris? No, even she wouldn't be allowed to eat it. In any case, so the Gemara goes through the drasha of Rabbi Shimon Elazar, where he learns it, and the Rabbanan have a different drasha for this to tell you that she'yatamol ben ish bal karchoi kach yatamol eved ish bal karchoi. You cannot do a bris, you cannot do a gerus, you cannot do a eved bal karchoi. No, he just says look at the Marsha over there. But if you look at the Marsha, you see he's asking a kasha on Rashi there and what he's saying. And so, yeah. So, so Rav Papa asks a question. Maskef la Rav Papa. Maybe it's only by this captive, the fast Torah, that the Chachamim say that that you cannot cannot take her to mikvah without a Kabbalah's mitzvahs, and you have to wait. If she's Makabal mitzvahs right away, fine. If not, you wait. Because maybe there is no obligation of mitzvahs at all. I will ever the shaykh mitzvahs, but an eved is obligated mitzvahs. Maybe the Rabbanan will also agree that you need to have Kabbalah's mitzvahs. The time we learned, echad ger ve'echad lo yikei achmenoi v'kechavim tzorach l'kabel.
You don't.
Wait. Maybe the Rabbanan will hold that you don't need, but an eved that you take from a guy you would need, and an eved that right. So a ger or eved, but only if you take it from a guy, will tzarach l'kabel, needs Kabbalah's mitzvahs. But if you get a ger from another yid, then it doesn't need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. Now look at Rashi. But an eved, maybe it doesn't need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. Why? Sheshaha etzloi kama yamim, because it was already shaha etzloi. This eved has already been in servitude for a while. V'niheg alav mitzvahs hanoigas be'eved. I didn't translate that. Those words are Rashi. V'niheg alav mitzvahs noigas be'eved, and he already accustomed him, niheg, made him have the minhag. Yeah. So niheg made him have the hanaga of mitzvahs hanagas be'eved Maybe he doesn't need Kabbalah anymore. Now, the Rush says that somewhere in this Gemara, Rashi tells us that even though we're talking about at the emancipation, at the Shichrur, the Eved does not need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. What about at the initial dunking? At the initial dunking, does the initial avdus, does the Eved need Kabbalah's mitzvahs or not? Not addressed. So some Rishonim learn, yes, of course you have to. And their proof is from Rav Papa's Kasha. Rav Papa says, how can the Chachamim say that you don't need, that you need Kabbalah's mitzvahs? We have over here a brisa that you don't need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. Right? So they say, maybe that brisa is talking about at the initial acquisition or the initial servitude. But maybe later on, the Chachamim indeed hold that you do need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. So from this they see that no, the Chachamim are going to hold even at the initial servitude that you do need Kabbalah's mitzvahs, and therefore we have a question. How can you say that if you say that they don't need Kabbalah's mitzvahs? That's the way they were learning. But Rashi, they say, Rashi holds that even the Chachamim, both Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar and the Chachamim, who say who disagree in regards to the second going to the mikvah, meaning at the shichrur, at the emancipation, whether you need Kabbalah's mitzvahs or not, because they're now going to have more obligations. But at the initial point, everybody agrees they do not need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. That's what the Rush quotes as Rashi. Rashi in this, so he doesn't say which Rashi, and some point to this Rashi here, because he says the words, v'niheg, he accustomed him, meaning the servant never accepted those mitzvahs. Rather, v'niheg, he made him become accustomed to the mitzvahs. So therefore, when he's emancipating him completely, he doesn't need any mitzvahs anymore. He doesn't need a Kabbalah's mitzvahs. He's already in that. So I'll say it as a kasha on Rashi. So what we now have is, Rashi seems to be saying like this. At the initial avdus, there you don't need Kabbalah's mitzvahs, even according to the Rabbanan. The machlekes of Shimon and Elazar, the Rabbanan, is about another point. Once this person's been an Eved, say 6 months, and you now want to emancipate him, you want to be meshachrer him, that shichrur doesn't need Kabbalah's mitzvahs or not. It needs to go to the mikvah. Is that automatic Kabbalah's mitzvahs, or do you need to do Kabbalah's mitzvahs, right? So does that need Kabbalah's mitzvahs? Eved ain't tzarich l'kabel b'shah shichrura, Rashi says, right? Meaning, but at the beginning, it would need or wouldn't need. No indication, but here's this indication. So we have now Rashi's opinion. Everybody agrees the initial avdus does not need Kabbalah's mitzvahs. The later shichrur, the Chachamim say needs Kabbalah's mitzvahs, Rabbi Shimon Elazar says you don't. And they're trying to prove it from Yefas Torah, to which the Gemara, Rav Papa says, I don't understand. Maybe that's only by Yefas Torah, but the Chachamim, right? But what we know is a shmamina. We learn from here, we know that Lekeach Misrael ain't tzarich l'kabel. That if you acquire an Eved from another Jew, right, and then you don't need to have Kabbalah's mitzvahs. That's the question of Rav Papa. So the which the Gemara says, okay, what's the whole conversation? Maybe it's talking about the initial shichrur, the initial mikvah. The initial mikvah can be done without Kabbalah's mitzvahs. That's what the Ritva asks. A lot of the Rishonim ask this question. The Rush himself, it says it doesn't make sense according to Rashi if that's true. But Rashi seems to learn that, so we have a lot of perushim as to what's going on here. So the Gemara from the start seems to be missing the first part. Either way, I mean, we have Rashi, we have a kasha on Rashi, we have the Ritva and then the Rush, and there are kashas on that. But what's unclear is in the Gemara itself. The Gemara is only addressing that one aspect. Okay. Yeah, they learn that since he's acquiring from another yid, so I can't be talking about the initial gerus because they would have had an initial avdus because he would have had a already initial by the other Jew, by the first Jew. So this can't be the initial one. Different versions of what the answers are, but I think the idea is we have to realize that the Gemara is addressing, the Machlokes is addressing the end and not the beginning. And it seems in Rashi, the beginning, everybody would agree does not require Kabbalas mitzvahs. And there are those that learn no, that everybody would agree it does require Kabbalas mitzvahs. Tana Rabban. V'gilchas reish of us at Tziparnei. To whatever obligation they're obligated in. Right. Accepting the mitzvahs that an Eved is obligated in. Tana Rabban. So the Brisa taught. Now, once we mentioned Yifas Toar, so the Gemara is going to talk about Yifas Toar to some degree, and says, okay, so it says in the Torah that she has to shave her head, and do her nails. So, what does do her nails mean? So, it means trim the nails, cut the nails. Rabbi Kiva Eimer Tagdil, you have to let them grow. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer said, "Nemar Asiya Barish." It says to do the head, right? It says a mitzvah of doing something by the head. And what is that? To shave the head. V'nemar Asiya B'tzaparnayim, and it says to do something by the nails. Malahalan Havara, Afkan Havara. Just over there, it's removing. So too over here, it's removing. And how do we know over there means removing? Because clearly it says V'gilcha. So to over here, v'asasa would also mean to cut it out. Now the kasha on that is really so why is it using a different term? The reason is because there is no term giluach on your nails. Giluach means shaving. You can't say shave your nails, right? So it has to use v'asasa. Okay, but it's an interesting thing. Why not use a cutting form? In any case, Rabbi Kiva says no. Nemar Asiya B'Rosh. It says do something with the head. Nemar Asiya B'Tzaparnayim, and it says do something with the nails. Malahala Nivul Avkan Nivul. Just as over there it's disgusting, so to over here it's disgusting. What is disgusting? Shaving your it the Gemara accepts that as a just that's the truth. But where do we know this from? This really the Gemara in Nazir talks about this that shaving one's head is a form of nivul. It's disgusting. In fact, the Gemara has a person can say, a husband can say, I don't, if she made a neder of Nazirus, where she's going to then have to shave her head, he can be made for it because that's disgusting to me, and I can't live with that. The Gemara says, yeah, but she can wear a sheitel. As the Gemara says, no, he could say that's it gets sweaty and dirty, and right? They didn't have sheitel nachers like today.
Their sheitels now are sheitels.
No, it wasn't necessarily the same thing. Even though there are sheitels, there are must as with human hair, right? You make human hair, but they didn't have a way to clean it and shampoos and whatever. So it was it would have a so you can say even that I don't like because it's disgusting. But the idea is that it's clear in the Gemara that shaving the head is a nivul, and one has a right to say that I don't want to do that. So we see that this is a nivul, and in fact, we see in Shir Hashirim, the Gemara in Brachas learns from Shir Hashirim from the fact that Shlomo, in speaking about the beauty of in the song, right? So in the mashal, the beauty of the woman, and it talks about because your hair is so beautiful. So we see here is beauty, and therefore cutting that away is a form of lenavel. It's making more disgusting. Varaya ladavar, and now the Gemara is going to bring, and so therefore the nails also. So by the way, there's a handlerai in the poskim, in the what happens if it's actually letting the nails grow is beautiful, right? So you can have it's if it's too long, it can be disgusting, but but just a little bit, a month, 2, 3, could actually be it could look nice. And in fact, there's a whole industry of making longer nails look nice.
So a woman who held the Guinness record for uncut nails for like 37 years. Finally, they were like.
Yeah, but those are like those.
Those are the ultimate.
She just had them cut.
But that is
She considered them very attractive until she didn't.
And no one else did either. Yeah.
Until she realized that she can't sleep at night and all the other issues with it.
Yeah, you can't type. Yeah.
That's what she wants to use her phone.
I was probably for 35 years she couldn't type either.
Yeah. But that is disgusting. But a month or 2 or 3, it isn't. So what's Rabbi Akiva saying? Is Rabbi Akiva defining the meaning of the pasuk? The pasuk means let it grow. And the reason is because it's disgusting, but even if it's not disgusting, you have to let it grow. Or does Rabbi Akiva mean the Torah wants it to be disgusting? We see that from the shaving of the head. And so the nails, let it grow because it's disgusting. And if it's not disgusting, it's actually nice, so maybe they cut it down. What is the meaning of Rabbi Akiva's because the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. So what does that mean? Let it grow regardless, or let it grow so that it's disgusting. And indeed, if it's nice, it's painted, and, nail polish, or you add a manicure done. So, what?
I said pedicure.
No, that's on the feet. So you had a manicure done, that it would actually be better to cut it down. Anyhow, so there's an interesting halacha in the Gemara in the next Gemara, because the Gemara brings proof to the word asiya being letting it grow from Mephibosheth. David HaMelech had to run away because his son was chasing him. And his son wanted to take over. Avshalom rebelled, and David HaMelech had to run away. And Mephibosheth ben Shaul, who David had been taking care of, who was essentially David's brother-in-law and heir to Shaul's throne, came to greet David as David is coming back. But the entire time that David was in exile, Mephibosheth did not care for himself, did not groom himself. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. He did not groom himself because he was in a sense of mourning for David. But people, whispered in David's ear saying, no, this is a rebellion against you. He's a part of the rebellion. He's coming out to greet you looking so scraggly, right? And he doesn't respect you. But it really was out of care for David. But be that as it may, there it says, Mephibosheth ben Shaul, Yorad likras hamelech, he came to greet the king. Lo asa raglav, he didn't do his feet. V'lo asa safama, he didn't do his mustache. So Mayasi over there, it means havara. He had not trimmed or shaved his mustache, right? Rashi says he did not shave his mustache. And lo asa raglav, he didn't do his feet. What does it mean he didn't do his feet? So Rashi says lo katzatz tziparnei raglav. He did not cut the nails, the nails of his feet. So he came out with fungus toes, and it didn't. What? In sandals. It didn't look all that good. But Tosfos says that can't be pshat. Tosfos has a very interesting raya. Later, by the halachas of taking off the boot by the yibum, the chalitza, I mean. So there, it talks about which part of the foot it has to go on. And the Gemara asks, the Gemara says that it's down, it's the ankle, it's the calf, it's the lower leg, but not the thigh. And Gemara says, how do you know that it's not the thigh? Actually, we see that the word raglav means even the upper leg, because it says asa raglav, and there it's by Mephibosheth, and it's talking about removing the hair in the upper part of the leg. In fact, the Gemara says that it would be removing the pubic hair. It's removing the body hair as a form of grooming. So now it's interesting enough how would that have been known to David in any case? Like how would anybody have seen that? But the idea is that it would be. We see that Tosfos says it can't mean cutting your nails or your toenails, because that would not be a kasha if it means cutting your toenails. So indeed, the regel over there means the foot, what we call the foot. So Tosfos goes into a lengthy discussion of, we know that halacha is that a part of lisilbash, part of the prohibition of a man dressing like a woman is grooming bodily hairs in the same way that a woman would, whether in shaving with a razor or cutting with the scissors, but in a way that is not typical for females to do, or anytime it's typical for men to do that, in anything that's typical for men, that would be permissible. So Tosfos goes into that halacha, very interesting halacha, and in the Shulchan Aruch over there, Shlomo Eiger points to another halacha in regards to a mirror, where the Shulchan Aruch says that it is l'silbash to look in a mirror, and the Rama says only if that's not a custom that men do. But if men look in the mirror, whether it is to trim their facial hair or to just make sure that there's no schmutz on their face, whatever it is, that if that's normal, so that would be permissible. And so it's just this is the halacha that over here we learn this idea that it is even things that are perhaps typically feminine, but if it is, we would usually think of it feminine, but it is now typical. It has already become normal for men to do that. That would be that would also be a mutter, and that's what went on over there. Okay, there are Tosfos has other explanations. Tosfos said maybe that it's Issa d'Rabbanan, and that was before the Issa d'Rabbanan was set in motion. Minat Torah, it's permissible, or Tosfos makes a difference also between you're only not allowed to do something to be vain, to beautify oneself, but to get rid of discomfort is permissible. And the place can deal with very interesting halachas. Say somebody's going white very early, and they're in their 20s and they're going white. Can they dye their hair? So normally we say no, you can't dye your hair because that's a feminine thing to do. Men typically, don't do that. Fine, but that's when you're trying to beautify yourself. You're 60 years old and you don't want to be white, so you're trying to do that. But if you're 20 and you're going white, and so that affects your shidduchim, affects so many things, perhaps you're allowed to. A place can deal with that because of this Tosfos. Tosfos says only for yipui, to make yourself, vain, like which in a feminine way. But if you're just trying not to get rid of a discomfort, that would be permissible. Okay, I want to end with one conversation we had about last week. Last week we saw the Gemara said by Gerim that the Gemara says as soon as they're makabel upon themselves mitzvahs and they're ready to go, and you push them away and they still come back, as soon as they're ready, then you take them to the mikvah. Why? Because shehui mitzvah le mashchina. Don't leave a mitzvah. So we asked, wait, whose mitzvah? And we said from here, a lot of places can say, it's a mitzvah on the Beis Din to convert them, because it can't be the non-Jews mitzvah, because it's before they have a mitzvah. They can't have a mitzvah to convert because they only have 7 mitzvahs, and converting is not one of them. So there is no shehuya mitzvah. Don't keep a mitzvah waiting. However, they point out that in this Gemara, the end of today's daf, this week's daf, actually is the other way. Because the Gemara asks, why is it that we see that unfortunately many Gerim suffer a lot, have a hard life? Why is it? So there are different explanations in the Gemara. And one explanation the Gemara says is because they didn't because they waited to get into the mitzvah. Now, there's the Gemara that they point out. The Gemara beforehand said differently, because the Gemara said maybe it's because they didn't keep the 7 mitzvahs when they were not Jewish, and which they were obligated to. And the Gemara says no, ger is kekata shanoil adam, and ger is like newly born, and so what they didn't do beforehand is of no consequence to them, because that was somebody else. That was not me. I mean, I'm only responsible for what happened from when I went to the mikvah, right? So, assuming that mostly they didn't. Most people don't keep Sheva mitzvahs, most non-Jews, and so that's why the Gemara is assuming that. But the same would be for waiting on the converting. At which point did they wait and not convert? Prior. So then that would be there as well. But in any case, what we see in this shita, at least, what's wrong with them waiting and not converting? They don't have to. So we see, at least in that sheet in the Gemara, which is whose opinion was that? Which is Rabbi Meir, that the reason is that really a ger who is ready for gerus and delays it, that there's a certain tvi on them, there's a tain on them, because they do. That's what shuhuya mitzvah. Once he's ready, the potential ger has an obligation to become a ger. That's what they see me, at least in this one shita, and that would be pshat in the Gemara. So going back to last week, what we ended with was that it seems like in the Gemara that the obligation is on the beis din to not delay and to do the gerus. Here we have the Gemara of that seeming to say, at least in one opinion, that there is a mitzvah on the ger, on the potential ger, to not delay and to go ahead and do the gerus as soon as they could. I've heard from Rabbi Senderovic that we paskin, it is the obligation of the beis din, that once somebody is ready, that shuhi mitzvah l'mashinan, we should not delay.